Okay, so this is an update of my knife build progress for my university product design honours degree project. I currently have 3 knives here. Each one is stage 1, 2 and 3 of the build process. So the original prototype here is the one I sent off to Paddy's Potato Peelers for general review and to get feedback on it. And the 2 following ones here are sort of representative of the newer design based upon those points of feedback. One is primarily made out of made using hand tools and basic processes, whereas this one has a mixture of CNC, hand finishing and also hand milling. So in terms of the first one, the main points of feedback that I was given were to do with the action of how the blade moves and also how the blade is shaped, how the handle is shaped and the ergonomics. So generally speaking, when talking about this knife here, the action isn't particularly good to the half stop, but it's fine in the fully open and fully closed positions. The second knife is quite a bit better. You can see it clicks in all 3 positions. However, the issue is the spring is a little bit too light. That was due to an error in heat treat. And then the third and final one, as you can hear, sounds good in all 3 positions and is very comparable to other knives on the market that are currently available in terms of its sound. Now, I'll do a quick drawing for you to explain why that's the case. So here is, I'll just quickly zoom in. Here is sort of the back end of a knife in the internals, so the handle would be coming over like that, and then the spring sits at the back here. Now, at the pivot point, there's basically some main points of contact. So we have this point here, here, here. Those are the 3 main points of contact. Now, to make sure that the knife clicks in all 3 positions, it needs to make a hard contact with each of these points. Now, the issue with model number 1, where it sounds quiet in the center position, is due to an issue here with these 2 points. Now, the issue is this here was filed by hand along there. Now, when that is rounded off like that a little bit, even just a slight radius across here means that you don't get 2 points there, you end up with 1 there. And that soft point of contact is why it doesn't make a click in the center position. Now, to fix this on knife version 2, I'll just redraw the back of the knife here. What I did was I took a section out like that at the back of the knife. So that rounded cut out there allowed for 2 points of contact here and here in the center position. This worked a lot better, but the issue is that I found next in version 2 there is a slight amount of give in that direction when it's fully open. So when you press against something hard, you can feel the blade tilting back just a tiny amount. Now, this is caused by an irregularity in this point of the blade, also on the diagram. This point here, or the 3rd point of contact, just at the top. So, to fix that, you can quite easily just take out a small section of material here to make it more of that shape at the top. And this is very exaggerated, but that's kind of how it ends up looking on the final piece. So you get a solid point of contact here, here and here, and that makes for a very good sounding action with no play in any of the positions, both up and down and side to side, in all three open, fully closed and centre positions. So that's pretty much where I'm at in terms of the action of the knives. But in terms of build quality, there's been a big step up along all of the builds as I've gone along. So in build version number 1, if we look specifically at the back section of the knife, if it gets into focus, there we go, you can see that there's a few gaps along the back, as well as slight issues with some of the pins, where material has slightly chipped out. The centering was one thing that I got pretty good on the first version. Another issue is the slot along here. It had an issue where it started tailing off a little bit as a curve that direction. And also the grind isn't completely flat all the way along. It has a slight concaved sort of convex outward bend as it goes along the blade edge, but otherwise it feels solid, and there's been no issues with blade play side to side as it's been used. Version 2 was a big step up for me. You can see there's good work with the hafting where all of the pins are nice and flush, there's no chip outs on the material. I decided to radius off the back of the knife, so you can see if it comes into focus. It's got a rounded off back there, and the slot was cut a lot nicer, and I even managed, I don't know how well that's going to show, to etch in an E for Elliot, my name, on the blade. Overall much better. General proof of concept pretty good. Now the final one, which is what I'm primarily going to talk about now, is one that is to a much higher standard than the others. The reason for this is the parts of the handle I wanted to be perfect fitting, and all the holes line up completely to each other as the layers went through. So I decided to use carbon fibre for the outside material, or the main scale. Get that in focus for you, there we go. And then I've layered it with red G10, which is a fiberglass reinforced resin based polymer, and then the layer of brass for the liners, and then the Owen Tool steel spring. As you can see, the pins as well are all neatly done throughout. There's no issues with hafting. There's no chip outs in any of the areas. And the action on this is significantly better than previous versions. Now, the CNC machine at the university doesn't allow for any form of ferrous metals such as steel to be milled because it doesn't have adequate cooling, but using a hand milling machine I managed to mill out all of the parts, such as the blade and the spring, as well as do this milled slot here which looks much cleaner, and I managed to sandblast the interior of that as well to give it a nicer texture as well as a better finish. I also did a lot better job of etching in the E on this here, it's a bit dirty there, which I just slightly adapted my technique for the other knife build and it worked a lot better. The inlay is done with a hard aluminium as well, so you can see that's, there we go, nicely inlaid and completely smooth there. And then due to COVID, the workshop had to shut down for a bit, so I didn't manage to mill the grooves in. So in quite a lot of high-end custom slip joints, they'll mill gaps here, which allows for the blade to open and close without getting caught up on the pointed section here, which is called the kick. But I decided just to cut out a square, which I actually quite like, because it gives this nice red zone here, and it just a little design feature that looks quite nice, and it serves a good purpose. This was the first blade I did using a grinder, so they got a flat grinder in university where I managed to grind the way along there and make a perfectly flat blade along here, and I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. Definitely areas for improvement, such as the plunge lines are a bit soft here, but otherwise I'm happy with the consistency of it. Just a better look at that back spring area there. You can see the mating of the blade and the springs quite nice as well. You can't feel any of the joins. It's flush in all positions as well. Now I've got some knives out here to compare it to in terms of size and its action. So we'll start off with a very common size here, and this is the Swiss Army knife, a standard Swiss Army knife. So you can see it's a little bit larger. It's still a UK legal knife, but the handle is fairly comparable in size, and the blade's just a wee bit longer on the cutting edge there, but again, UK legal carry. For anyone that has any GC knives, this is a number 15. As you can see, it's quite a bit larger. And then Bokeh knives here, this is a prime Barlow here. I'll just move those up a little bit. You can see it's roughly the same as that. So I'll just move these two to the side here. So this is a manufactured knife that uses a very similar technique. Oh, won't focus. There we go. So this is called a bird's eye pivot here, and as you can see, my knife has a bird's eye pivot as well. It's just a little bit smaller, but you can see it's very comparable in terms of fit and finish to each other. You can't tell where the pins meet the outside collared area. So I'll do a bit of comparison of the action as well. So you've got your Swiss Army knife here. You see, it's relatively easy to open and close. This is what you commonly call a 5-pull. And then a little bit stouter than that is probably about the same. This is about a 6 or 7 pull on both of these, and that both of these knives relatively easy to open and close using the nail nicks. The GC is probably a little bit stronger than the Bokeh here, but very comparable to this here. So this is a little bit stouter, but it's still able to open and close with relative ease, and it sounds good. See, it's got a nice firm action to close it. So one of the design elements I wanted was for it to be in the fully open position. The hardest pulling point would be from there to there, and then it would be easier for the close, because the amount of times that knives snap close on your fingers is ridiculous. So I wanted it to be just a little bit weaker on the pull there, which I managed to pull off by just changing some of the elements of the internal mechanism. So overall, I'm very happy with how this turned out, and in terms of the comparison to the others, I'll do that quickly for you. So we've got the first one here, the second one in the middle, and the third one at the end. So that's pretty much it, and thanks for watching. If you want to find out some further information, visit my website here, which is elliottcansfieldmedia.com, and you'll find that straight away, and just have a look over my design work and let me know what you think. Okay, thanks very much for watching. I'll see you later.